This episode is sponsored by eLuxury Supply. Use offer code Evansville Podcast 10 at checkout to save 10% on your order at eluxurysupply.com. Hello, and welcome to Evansville Podcast. My name is Jason Burton. Thank you for listening. Today's episode is a little more serious than normal. It's a very important topic, though. We have Andrea Grace Phillips. She is a certified life coach. She does executive coaching and private personal coaching. Part of the private personal coaching, I guess her specialty, would be she helps mothers of addicts, specifically heroin addicts, in this case of what we're talking about. She recently had an article in the Courier Press about what she does, so definitely check that out. I've got a link to it in the show notes. If you go to evansvillepodcast.com, you can find links to what we talk about in this episode. Just search for heroin. I believe it's the only episode we've talked about heroin before. So you should be able to find the links to get it if you need to get a hold of her. Or if you know someone that should, you can reach out to her. So yeah, we'll talk about that in a second. But before we get to that, I'd like to talk a little bit about our sponsor. So, as you may know, doing this podcast introduces me to a lot of interesting companies and people. For example, did you know one of the top-selling bedding companies on Amazon is based right here in Evansville? They're called eLuxury Supply. They sell sheets and beds and mattress pads and dog beds and really all kinds of stuff for the home, for every room in the home. They're on Amazon and they sell through their own website at eluxurysupply.com. Now, that's more important to me to help support the show and also to get a deal for yourself. You can use offer code Evansville Podcast 10 on eluxurysupply.com and you'll save 10% off, and also helps the show. We get a little affiliate action there. So, Just so you know, I had ordered 2 of these mattresses last year over the internet through Amazon, I believe, and I hadn't even realized that it was an Evansville company. So I was very happy to learn that eLuxury Supply mattresses they're great mattresses and they're actually from Evansville. So yeah, they give you a great night's sleep. They've sold thousands of them. They have great customer reviews. And just wondered if you knew about it because I had heard of them as exceptional sheets. I didn't recognize the eLuxury Supply name at the time. Since then, a lot of great news for eLuxury Supply has come out. So very happy for them and want to show support. We'll be talking about them and singing their praises, bragging about them. Because, great things are coming out of Evansville, and eLuxury Supply is one of a great example of a company that's just killing it right now. So let's go to eluxurysupply.com and get a great mattress, get a great night's sleep. Use offer code Evansville Podcast 10 and save 10% on your order. This offer ends January 1st, 2017. Now, on to the show. You said Andrea, right?
Yes.
Okay, because you never know. I would have probably said Andrea, so
it's okay.
I apologize.
Everybody does.
Andrea, you mentioned earlier that before we started recording that you are not an Evansville native.
No.
Are you outside the area then, far away, or?
I'm a Viking. I'm from Minnesota.
Oh.
And grew up there, and then as an adult moved away, went off to college. Lived a lot of different places.
Yeah.
Came back to Minnesota for about a decade. Left again. Lived in Florida, Tennessee. Louisville is where I was living when I met my current husband, who was from here, and that's how I ended up here.
So you've been to Florida and stuff. So you're not. So the summers are not like hurting you.
Oh,
Here in
well,
Evansville.
I don't
maybe
like
they
them.
are, but you're not. It's not like a first time to
No. The winters are nothing, and the summers
exactly.
are fine. I actually love Evansville.
Okay.
I think it's a great 4 seasons, well-rounded.
We do well. Some of the seasons are very short, like spring and fall.
Yeah.
But or maybe for you, it feels like
we
fall
don't have
all the
spring and
time,
fall
really.
at all in Minnesota. I'll just say that.
Yeah, well, that's, yeah, I guess that is one of the positives, is being able to experience a couple of seasons here and there.
Yeah.
Although it feels like we're in summer and winter mostly. But
it does. Fall's my favorite season.
Yeah, so it may feel like fall for you being from Minnesota.
It does kind of feel like the fall is long here to me.
Yeah.
Just because they're so brutal in Minnesota.
Right. Now, we're not here to talk about seasons, though.
Right.
It's a little more serious topic than I've talked too much about in the past. Never talked about this particular subject in the past on the podcast. So, well, thank you for this. But we're talking about heroin addiction. Am I right on this?
Yes.
Okay. And yeah, I've been seeing a lot of this in the news over the past few years, I guess, as heroin seems to be making a comeback, or whatever you want to call it. There's a rise of it in the area.
Right.
And you're somehow involved with helping it's mothers, right, of heroin addicts?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm actually a certified life coach.
Okay.
And I do both executive coaching as well as private personal coaching. And on the personal side of things, my niche is to deal with mothers of addicts. I'm the mother of a heroin addict myself, who is in and out of recovery. I'm 9 years on this journey, and it has certainly not been for the faint of heart. It's unbelievably challenging. It's almost like having a child with a disability, only if they had a disability, everybody would have a lot of empathy and work with you and help you and so on. And the stigma with having an addict for a child is that somehow, they're a horrible person, they're a loser, you're a bad parent, whatever the case may be. And in fact, the opioid epidemic that we're facing today, half or more of those people began as prescription drug users with a prescription that they received. Maybe it was a child in sports, had a knee injury, got a script for some pain pills. Next thing you know, they're taking more than they should,
right.
And they sort of graduate on to other things. So it just isn't a garden variety, that's a junkie, steer clear kind of a thing anymore. So my goal is to help raise awareness, and the whole purpose is to share without shame. That's kind of the tagline on one of the online support groups that I'm a part of, called the Addicts Mom. They can be found both online as a website as well as the Facebook group. They have 70,000 members on their Facebook group. It's huge.
Wow.
And that's the philosophy behind what they're trying to do, to share without shame. Drug addicts are currently still the lepers of our society. They're really, everybody thinks that it's a choice,
Right.
And it may well begin as a choice the very first time, maybe even the next couple times. And then once that drug owns you, it's just no longer a choice. And you can spend decades battling. So.
Yeah. So I guess, I don't know how much, how detailed you want to, that you normally get with your own experience with this, but so like at what point, how old maybe was your son when this happened? Or?
Well, we moved to Florida when my son was a teenager. He actually was raised in church, was homeschooled half of his life, came from a decent family.
Yeah.
His father and I were both professionals, involved in the community, didn't have any family crisis until his dad and I got divorced, which rocks a lot of people.
Sure.
And so somewhere in his junior or senior year, we ended up getting divorced his junior year of high school, and he was becoming very active at a local gym. He was hanging around a lot of young men that were older than he was, in their 20s. Somebody at that gym introduced him to some other drugs. We're not sure exactly what he started with. He has had a diagnosed anxiety and depression, panic attack disorder for a very long time, since he was really young. And that's kind of hereditary in the family. So he is on an anti-anxiety medication. When he takes that appropriately and that's well managed, it's great, works really well for him. When he doesn't, which it took us up until about the time he was in high school to really realize that was what was going on with him. And I honestly think it was a little too late, because he started self-medicating with other things and eventually graduated to heroin.
Right. Oh, so that's interesting. I don't usually put the painkiller with the leading to the heroin thing, but I guess that makes sense. It's when you're looking for relief. Right.
Opiates, are all in that pharmacological family. So if you're somebody that likes downers, you're going to like all of the benzos, you're going to like alcohol, and you're going to like heroin, because you want to slow it down. Gotcha. If you're somebody that's got a lot of anxiety and stress.
Sure.
If you're somebody that's super mellow and you want to jack up your personality, you're going to like yuppers. You're going to like Coke. You're going to like other things. Right. So it was a very natural. A lot of people graduate from the benzos, Klonopin and Xanax, and those kinds of things to heroin eventually, because it works on the same parts of the brain.
Yeah. Wow. So then, as a mother of a heroin addict, you mentioned you were helping other mothers through this. I mean, how does that even work? I mean, I don't even know what to even ask out here, because it's just rubbing my head around it. Just anybody with addiction, I guess it's hard to help someone. But what steps do you got to begin with them?
Well, there's a lot of resources that people don't know about. There are local groups for moms of addicts. Okay. There's one that I participate in. I'm happy to share that information if people want to contact me, because it's anonymous, kind of like any other, it is not a 12-step group, but it is does have anonymity, and I want to respect that. There are also online resources where they can get support. Typically, this level of addiction, it's not like, I've got a high school kid that kind of likes to party on the weekends with their friends, and sometimes that causes a little trouble in their life, and, they're going to go on to college and it'll all settle out and they'll be productive human beings. When addiction at this level fully takes over, it completely consumes the entire family. Usually that means, they have to do really aggressive things to fund their habit, which may mean stealing from family members, pawning things. It alters their personalities really severely, so they typically treat their loved ones poorly. And it just causes all kinds of family upheaval. And it's very difficult to just get off the ride, because you can see that your child is in really intense pain, or your loved one. If you're a husband and you're married to an alcoholic, or if you're a sibling, it impacts everybody in the family, and it's life or death on a daily basis. And there can be incarcerations and probation and all kinds of legal troubles, and so you're constantly in this state of crisis. And mothers of addicts often talk about receiving something called the call. Everybody knows what the call means. The call means you're being notified by a hospital or some authority that your child has overdosed somewhere, and they're either in a coma or they're dead. And so, I scroll through hundreds, if not thousands, of posts a day from the Facebook group that say, I got the call. My child overdosed today at 3:30 in the morning in a bus station restroom, or whatever the case may be. And many times, they take their own lives. The suicide rate is just astronomical, because nobody can live like that indefinitely. And because heroin, and now heroin laced with fentanyl, or fentanyl by itself, is the most lethal, it also has the lowest rate of survival. So by the time you've graduated to heroin, you've got about a 10% shot at living long-term out a normal lifespan. Yeah. And because it's so potent, once addicts get any amount of sobriety, whether it's a month or 2 years, the next time they do it is almost always deadly. So their relapsing is so much more dangerous than, for example, maybe an alcoholic that relapses. they're probably not gonna, die the first time they take a drink if they were sober for 10 years,
Sure.
the way a heroin addict would. So it's a different type of addiction. And so as a parent, specifically a mother, worrying continually, where is my child? How is my child? Did they eat today? Are they robbing someone? Are they selling their bodies to feed their habit? Are our realities. And, the rest of the world post their pictures on Facebook of their children's first day of school, along with me, and sporting events. And because I have other bonus children as well in my household, and are completely unaware of what it's like for the mom of an addict that just wants to know, is my child safe? And, did they eat today? And I'm not thinking about, gosh, is he going to get married? Is he going to have children? Is he going to buy his first house? Those kinds of things during the time when he's in active, substance abuse disorder. And so it's just unbelievably overwhelming. And my goal in helping other addicts' moms is to enlighten them to some of the ways that life can still be worth living for themselves, in spite of the fact that, their greatest treasure is in such chaos and crisis. It still is possible to have a joyful, peaceful life of your own and pursue the things that you are passionate about and are called to, and find the support that you need to survive it, because it's so difficult. Typically, moms of addicts develop their own addictions, have health issues, have relationship issues. Because there's so much chaos and stress, it just wreaks havoc on all areas of their life. And they have a lot of difficulty living a normal life of their own.
Sure. Yeah, I guess I never think about the heroin addict being like a teenager or it's more of, and just, when it comes to mind, it's probably like 20s, 30s maybe. So I never really thought about someone that young getting involved with it. And then that's just, it's hard enough being a teenager.
Yeah.
But
my son didn't start with heroin as a teenager.
Yeah,
he started on some other things.
Okay.
And, whether that was 16 or 17, somewhere around there.
Sure.
And then graduated to several other things. I don't believe he did heroin for the first time until he was 20, 21-ish. Mm-hmm. I don't have an exact date. This is all a little blurry. He's 26 now. And currently, to my knowledge, he's been heroin free for over a year, but he hasn't been sober from other, various addictions. But that is somewhat comforting to me, and also terrifying, because that relapse factor is so deadly. When they're in active use with heroin, it almost seems like it's less dangerous unless they get a bad dose, which is really what we're dealing with, these days with all of the heroin that's laced with the fentanyl.
Yeah.
Now, fentanyl is the thing that Prince overdosed from. Mm-hmm. It's the thing that Michael Jackson overdosed from. And so it's about 50 times more potent than heroin, but it's the same kind of high. So people think it's really the good stuff to have the heroin that's laced with the fentanyl, right, but it's just so lethal.
Yeah, or they're not aware that it's in there, because I was reading an article, it's in the paper, the Courier, recently, about that. They think that that's coming to the area more to this area, more to Evansville area, and that one of the sentences was, you can't trust your drug dealer to know what it's like. I guess that's a pretty powerful statement there. But so they may not even know that this stuff's in there, or like you said, they're trying to get that extra boost and didn't, and just overdo it, and it's over. Yeah.
And I think that we feel, because we're relatively in the Midwest here, that we're somehow insulated from, this is something that happens in larger cities, but that just isn't the case. My son's original introduction to it, I don't know if it was in Florida or in Texas, where he's from now, and he's lived for the last several years. But it's certainly, the stats here in Evansville are staggering. And they have been doing a series of interviews on the Courier Press. And in fact, I have recently done one myself that will be coming out soon.
Oh, good.
that interview as part of that series, and I'm grateful for that opportunity again to share so that most people just don't want to share because there is such a stigma. And now there's another site called 129 a day, because that's the number of overdoses that we have, deaths from drug overdose a day, in this country. I mean, it is staggering.
Yeah.
When we think about, we have a shooting in a nightclub in Florida, and I don't remember exactly the number of people that died in that. Maybe it was 40 people or 50 people. Yeah. And that is national news. And we have 129 people a day that overdose and die from a drug addiction. And it's never on the news, or very rarely on the news. We're just starting to gain some traction with what an epidemic this opioid crisis is. So people on the 129 a day site on Facebook are posting their obituaries of mostly younger people. I would say anywhere from the age of 18 to 30 is kind of in the pocket of the majority. And they're sharing, this is what my child, my sibling died from. It was a substance abuse disorder. They lost their battle to this addiction. And I'm really proud of the bravery of those people to come forward and talk about all the great things about them. They were generous. They were kind. They were helpful to other people. They excelled at whatever it was, sports or computers or, and yet on such and such a day, they lost their battle. And it just, we have to have more people that are willing to do that so that we start breaking this stigma.
Yeah, the stigma. And you mentioned earlier, like anxiety, depression, that has its own stigma. So it's like hard to reach out for help because you don't want to be looked down upon for any of this stuff, but it's more important to reach out than to keep going.
Yeah, so. Absolutely. And it's very difficult to do because if you realize when the addict is in full-blown addiction, nothing in their brain capacity is working right. Just like, you can't drink a lot and get behind the wheel of the car and have the same kind of reaction time and thought process when you're driving. Well, when you're driving the car of your life and your brain is completely under the influence of chemicals that take months to get out of your system, that person can't even make a well-informed, conscious decision to get themselves the help they need most of the time. So it's such a misconception that, the addict just needs to, just make a choice for recovery. Well, obviously, if they could make a good choice for recovery, they wouldn't live this way, because nobody wants to be selling themselves for their next hit and living in some, abandoned house and stealing from their relatives. Yeah. Like, nobody would choose that. So. Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that you're a certified life coach. It's not just with this helping with people with addiction, is it? Or do you have other things that you do with the
I do.
Life coaching?
Absolutely. I do executive coaching and consulting. So the name of my company is actually Grace Coaching and Consulting Services. Okay. And I'm doing some work here locally with various organizations, doing training and executive leadership types of things. It's just a different vein of my coaching business. And based on my education and my background in business, that's kind of my livelihood, but my passion has been from a personal level, to help other moms of addicts, because it's such a big issue in my own life. Yeah.
And so the best way to get a hold of you then is it through the Grace Coaching?
Yes. Yep. You can reach me on my newly designed website, which is AndreaGracePhillips.com. Okay. You can find me on Facebook as Andrea Grace Phillips. And I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, kind of all the social media.
All the stuff you have to be anymore,
so you can find me in those places.
Okay, awesome. Well, I want to make sure, is there anything else that you wanted to mention before we wrap up here?
I do. There are some local resources that I want to make people aware of. Yeah. We do have a harm reduction coalition here in Evansville.
Okay.
That the whole point of that is to assist people that are in active addiction by reducing the amount of harm that they are putting themselves in until such time as they can get into, some kind of treatment. There's a needle exchange program, which is very controversial, but the bottom line is if you can keep people alive a little bit longer until they either make a decision for help or are able to get the help that they've already decided they want, that's a pretty big deal. So, I encourage people to take the step to find the support that they need for their family, for their loved one, and, whether that's find a group or whatever the case may be. There's a lot of resources out there because there's also a lot of national attention on this now.
Right. Okay. Well, thanks for talking about this with me. And like I said, it's not my normal thing, but I'm glad you did, because we need to know about these things and help out when we can.
I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thanks. And I'll link to everything in the show notes. That way,
okay,
people don't have to write it down in their car trying to drive. So yeah, just go to the show notes and you'll find the links.
Okay,
cool.
Great.
Thanks. Thanks again to Andrea for talking with us about this very important topic. Please, if you know someone or you yourself are dealing with this, reach out, get some help. The resources are there and they're available, so definitely check that out. And thanks for hanging out with us for a little bit, and look forward to some interesting announcements next week. So please stay tuned. We'll be having a special podcast on September 30th, which is International Podcast Day. So make sure you are paying attention that day. Good job, everybody.